Okay, so we've all been to school, right? We sat through math, history, science, but have you ever stopped to think, what was that really all about? I mean, beyond the tests and the textbooks, what's the actual true function of education in our lives and for society as a whole? Well, today we're going to pull back that curtain and take a deep dive into the hidden machinery of school.
Seriously, just think about it for a second. So much of who you are right now, your confidence, maybe some of your anxieties, your whole sense of where you fit in the world, a lot of that was shaped in those school hallways and classrooms. So, we're going to go on a little journey today, kind of from the inside out, starting with the really personal stuff, how school forges our very identity.
And to kick things off, to really understand how school shapes us from the inside, we've got to start with the sociologist Charles Horton Cooley. He came up with this brilliant and kind of mind-bending concept called the looking glass self.
Now, the core idea here is absolutely fascinating. It's that we don't just see ourselves directly. Nope. Instead, our self-concept is basically a reflection. We're constantly catching glimpses of ourselves in the eyes of everyone around us, our teachers, our friends, even our rivals.
Cooley breaks this down into 3 simple steps. So, first, you imagine how your teacher sees you when you're giving a presentation. Are you confident? Are you stumbling? Second, you imagine their judgment on that. Are they impressed? Are they not so impressed? And third, you internalize that feeling. You feel pride or maybe a little bit of shame. And that feeling becomes a tiny building block of your identity. School is just this constant, nonstop feedback loop of that very process.
So it's pretty clear that school is this powerful workshop where our identity gets hammered into shape. But here's the next question. Where does that personal workshop fit into the giant, sprawling factory of society itself? Let's zoom out.
And for that bigger picture, we're going to turn to another sociologist, Talcott Parsons. You see, he saw society not as just a random mess of people, but as this incredibly complex, interconnected system. And in that system, every single part, especially education, has a critical job to do.
Parsons looked at society almost like a living body. The family is one organ, the economy is another, and school, well, school is the crucial connector. It's the bridge that takes us from the small, private world of our family to the huge, public world of work and being a citizen. It really is the great connector.
He even came up with this model called AGIL to explain it. You can think of it like a checklist for a healthy society. And education, it plays a huge role in 2 of these. It takes care of I for integration, literally mixing kids from all these different backgrounds and teaching them to play by the same set of rules. And it handles L for latency, which is really just a fancy way of saying it recharges society's batteries by passing down the core values that keep us all motivated and generally pointed in the same direction.
So for Parsons, the really crucial thing about school is that it's the place where we get selected and sorted for our future jobs. It's designed to teach us discipline and figure out where we fit in the social machine, all based on our achievements, on our merit.
But what is it that actually holds this giant machine together? What stops it from just flying apart? For that answer, we got to turn to Emile Durkheim, who is often called the founder of modern sociology. And this guy was obsessed with what he called social glue.
Durkheim's big idea was something called the collective consciousness. Just think of it as the invisible moral fabric of a society. It's that whole set of shared beliefs and values that we all just kind of agree on without ever talking about it. And the main place we learn to weave this fabric, you guessed it, school.
Now, Durkheim said there are 2 types of the social glue. In a traditional society, like a small village, maybe everyone's a farmer. They're all held together because they're similar. He called that mechanical solidarity. But in a modern society, you've got doctors and programmers and baristas. We're all held together because we depend on each other's different skills. That's organic solidarity. And what this means is that education's job had to change from making everyone the same to preparing all of us to be these unique, specialized, but totally essential parts of a much bigger, more complex whole.
So for Durkheim, here's the bottom line. Education is the #1 way we create a stable society. It's how we download the moral code from one generation to the next, making sure we can all live and work together without everything falling apart.
All right, so we've got the self, the system, and the social glue. But what about the overall vibe of a society, the culture? For this, let's bring in Pitirim Sorokin, who argued that it's the deep-seated cultural values that really define a civilization, and it's education's job to nurture them.
Sorokin basically said cultures come in 3 main flavors. You've got ideational cultures, which are all about faith and spiritual stuff. Then there are sensate cultures, focused on materialism, what you can see, taste, and buy.
And finally, idealistic cultures, which try to find a nice balance between the two. Now, just take a second. Which one do you think we're living in today?
Now, for Sorokin, the big danger was a society becoming too sensate. Too materialistic, too focused on stuff, and in the process, losing its moral compass. He saw education as the great stabilizer, the one institution whose job it is to promote moral and ethical values, to keep our entire culture in balance. Okay, so these brilliant thinkers, Cooley, Parsons, Durkheim, and Sorokin, they've given us the deep why behind school. They've shown us how it shapes us, how it serves society, and how it creates our culture. So now, let's shift gears and get practical. Let's look at the how, the actual real-world rules and rights that school drills into us.
And this brings us right into the modern day, the practical application of all these big ideas. How do we actually create a functioning, ethical society? Well, it happens through a shared understanding of two key things: our rights and our social norms.
At the very foundation of modern life are human rights. These are the fundamental, non-negotiable rules of the game. They're the rights that belong to every single person on this planet, simply because they're human.
These rights are universal, they're inherent, and they apply equally to everyone. And what's the primary vehicle for making sure everyone knows about them? It's education. School is where we create awareness of these rights and teach the democratic values that are needed to actually protect them.
And then we have social norms. Look, if human rights are the Constitution, then social norms are the day-to-day laws and customs. They're all the unwritten rules about how to behave, how to stand in a line, how to raise your hand, how to cooperate on a team project. School is basically a factory for social norms.
So here's the takeaway, the thing that ties it all together. Education is the engine. It takes all those big sociological ideas we talked about and it makes them real. It does this by transmitting values, shaping what we believe about the world, and reinforcing all those social norms that prepare us to be responsible citizens who can actually function together.
We've seen that education is so much more than learning facts for a test. It's about building the very foundation of who we are as individuals and who we are as a society. And that leaves us with one final and really critical question. If school is that powerful, what values, what norms, and what kind of society should we be trying to build for the next generation?